Yeah, guys, very good evening. So welcome to this lecture number 3, and now we will continue with the importing, how to bring the data in the Power Query, but this time we will use the text file, and I'm going to basically show you this in two parts. One is how to import the text file and how to import the multiple text files if you have, basically from a folder. So now, first of all, I go and open this Lecture3 file. uh, so text file 1, text file 2, text file 3, they are created by me. You can see here just a dummy data. We are not going to do any analysis. We are not in that situation right now, but just want to be comfortable with the importing and the exporting of the data, so this is your blank totally Excel, and if you go in the data and you click on the query and the connection, you will not find here anything, right? Because this is a fresh file I have created. Okay, now I show you before we start importing the text files, that what we are supposed to do. This is my text file. So if I open this, you can see that this has some name, marks 1, marks 2, marks 3, and so the names are repeating, and the rest of the files are also the carbon copy of this specific file, right? And that is the reason both are, all the three files have the same size. But if you look at this carefully, this file basically is 47 MB, right? So it definitely holds a good amount of data. Now the first thing which I want to tell you is that how to import this single file, and then we will see that is it going to also impact us our Excel in terms of the size of the file, because in Excel, if we have a big data storage done, if we store a big data in the Excel, then that starts hanging. Okay, so Power Query is a great tool. I'm sure it will help us in reducing the file size also. So the first thing which we, without wasting the time, I want to show you is that how we can pick up the data. So last time we went in the from table and range. This time it is not, right? Because this option we used when you have a table in the Excel sheet. This time we will use the from the text and the CSV file, right? Now I exactly do not know where this option is available in 2010 and 2013 Excel, but just go and check that, right? This must be under the Power Query, the tab. Okay, as I explained in the first lecture. So I click on the from text and CSV, and now we will wait for this pop-up. So you can see here the pop-up is coming, and I'll go to this text file. It's available in the desktop, and I click on the Power Query. This is a folder. You need to basically go and click on that. So there I go, and in this specific now folder, import text from folder, I go and pick up the file, right? So right now I cannot go and select all the files. If I try to use the shift key, which I'm doing right now, you see I can't select all the multiple files. You can't select the multiple files, right? So the first thing is that we will simply go and import the single file, then we will see. So single file size is 4 MB, as you can see, approximately. So I click on the import, and now the Power Query wizard will pop up. So we need to wait for that. So as you can see here, guys, this is the preview, right? So this preview is coming based on the first 200 rows. This tells you basically that everything is looking good here or not. In case if this data comes together, then you can always go and use these delimiters. I'm sure all of us have used the text to column, or if you are the Access user, if you work in the Access database, then there also we use this option a lot. Delimiter colon, comma, equals, semicolon, whatever, and then in the custom also we have the another options, right? Right now it has automatically picked up the tab. Okay, so I don't have to do anything because my preview looks good. Now before I load, I want to transform this data, right? Now you can also load the data from here, but generally we do not use this option because Power Query editor, why we are bringing the data there? Because we want to clean the data, we want to sort out the things, we want to remove the unwanted things, we want to maybe apply some functions, maybe we want to use the other features, merge query, append query. There are a lot of stuff, right? So that's why first of all we go in the transform data. I hope you remember the option, the term I used, ETL. You remember extraction and the transform and then load. Okay, so we always use the transform data. Some of you were calling me, I think last day, and you were telling me that you don't find this or transform option in your this Excel. So guys, I think you find there the edit option. In case if it is there, give it a try. I mean, depending upon the Excel version, you know, maybe few changes would come, but those changes are very minor, right? So some people don't see the transform, I think the button, so they can use the edit button, whatever the button, it's coming there. Okay, so finally guys, as you know that this is the query pane. We have already seen this. This is the property query setting, and from here you can import the data. So what I do is I just keep this name as one only. Okay, so here we have the file, and this is how it is, you know, I mean, I can just go and use this file. Okay, now the next thing which I want to do is I want to go and take this data in the Excel. So I click on the close and load. Now when I click on the close and load this option, you see what will happen. Obviously, as you know, the data will now start coming in the Excel spreadsheet. So obviously if the data would come in the Excel sheet, it will impact the size of the Excel, isn't it? So I'm telling you all the things from the very scratch. Listen to me carefully. If you have any question, you can ask me. Okay. So now you see the data is there, and obviously the text file data is there, and this data is, I think I'm using somewhere around, you can see here that it's 3,15,790 rows, right, which is a good amount of data. Now I go and save this file because I want to show you the size of the file. Let's go and save this file, right? I'm sure this will impact the size because this is not a normal data. This is a little bit more than our expectations, because generally in Excel we don't like to use you know, this much data. No, so I take you to my the folder, and by the way, let me close this one. Now you can see here that this is the lecture3 file, and this is also the size of the file has, you know, increased, which is a very bad news for us, right? Because if tomorrow I have to import all these three files, this is going to impact, and who knows, maybe I may have 1 million records in this text file. In that case, you can imagine the size of the Excel file, right? So the suggestion here is that, because if I'm importing this big data here, I rather, you know, keep that data in the Powerquery editor. Now you would ask me why. What will happen then if you keep the data in the Powerquery editor and not, you know, export this data in the spreadsheet? Well, you can see yourself what will happen. Before I say anything, I simply go and delete this sheet. I don't want this sheet, right? That's okay, right? Don't worry. We always have a data preserved in the Powerquery, so there is no need to panic. Okay, I know to do the analysis we need the data, but the data is there. You can see here it started saying connection only, right? If I, let's say, undo it, I think I can't undo it. I'm sorry, the sheet was deleted. So you see, when you have a connection only, that means the data is not loaded. You can see here, right? But when you load the data in the spreadsheet, this always tells you how many rows you have uploaded, and you know, this also says that successfully loaded. So now we like to save this file, and I have saved this file, and before I show you the file size, I double click on this, and I want to make sure that the data is not deleted from the Powerquery editor. This is the beautiful thing about the Powerquery editor. The data in the sheet, you may delete it, but this is not going to be deleted here. Right now, can you tell me, Sam, if I have to delete this data from here, what I'm supposed to do? Yes, fantastic. So you just go here and you right click on this and you can delete it. So the data will be removed, and then in the query, in the connection also, in the front of the Excel part, you know, there also you can just go and say right click and delete. Okay. So the first thing is the data we have here. Okay, the data is there. I simply go and close this. Okay, but the data we have not exported here. Now I have saved this file and I want to see the, you know, the file size. Now you can see here, wow, this is unimaginable, right? This file is just 14 KB. Can you beat that? This is a 47 MB and this is just 14 KB, and you have the data over here, right? Now the second question comes, so if I don't have a data over here, how I can make the reports? Well, you can always make the pivots. You remember that? You can right click here, you can say that load to, and you can use this option, the pivot table report. Now can anyone tell me, if I double click over here, can I use the pivot here? Can I use the pivot from here, close and load to, if I click here? Yes, absolutely. You can't, because this is not gonna work. In fact, close and load to this option will also not work because you have already exported the data, right? For example, just again, kind of revision, because these are the basic fundamentals. You see that the data is not coming. So don't panic, okay? Just right click here and say that load to. Now, obviously, I want to use the pivot table, so I can use the pivot table over here. Do you want the data in this existing sheet or the new working sheet? I have already told you about these options, so let's keep the existing working sheet, and I click OK. Now the pivot will be created. Now the pivot will use your Power Query data, right, which is not impacting the file size. So this is a very powerful thing you are actually learning, right? This is a very powerful tool which you are learning. This can make your life very easy. So we have got here all the things. We have got the name, so I'm just going to put the name over here, and just for to show you. Obviously this does not make any sense, this is a dummy data. I'm just going to show you this pivot. So you have the pivot created here, and obviously the next thing which you do is you can simply go and report layout. You can make this tabular, you can do whatever you want with this, right? So finally, when the report is ready, for example, I go and save this Excel file. So if I save this Excel file, this is saved. I have got my data, right? So we have got our pivot data. I just go and write here pivot data. So now what? We can quickly go and check the size of our this Excel file. Can you see that it has little bit raised, but not to that extent. It is still under 200 KB. So very less burden on your Excel file, though you are dealing with a huge data, right? So here we have learned a couple of things, right? How the Power Query editor can work with the connection only, right? And then you also saw that how it is going to keep your file to the minimal size, and so you can load more and more data into this. Now one more thing, because a lot of times students ask me that, so if they have to create the connection, then is it mandatory to first load the data in the Excel and then delete the file? No, it is not. For example, if you go and use the data from text, you can, while exporting the data from the Power Query editor, you can create the connection only, right? Now I use another file, for example 2, and I say import. So this will also take the same the same steps. So we have here, so now we have the data over here, and I say that I want to transform the data. I click on the transform. You find the Power Query showing you the file which is 2. As you can see here, click on this query pane and you have the data here, right? Now when you say that I want to, let's say, create the connection only, for example, so you can use the close and load, or what you can do is you can say the close and load to also. It depends, because if you use the close and load, right, then the data will simply go there, right? So I think what we should do is we should use the close and load too, because in the close and load too we have the option here. So you can't use the close and load because there the data will come in the Excel sheet. Okay, give it a try. So now I want only the connection. Maybe I need the pivot, but the pivot maybe I can later also I create it. So right now I'm not interested. I just want to create the connection. So just keep this option. Okay, this option I already said that this is for the Power Pivot. Okay, and in this series we are not learning the Power Pivot, so you just forget about this option. Only create connection and say okay. Now you have another data. You can see here this data is connection only, right? And I can save this Excel file, and once I have saved the file, I can show you the size of the file. Now let's go and check that. Look at this. So I simply go and say refresh, and the file of the size is still 199. Wow, this is fantastic. So almost 2 text files of 47 MB you have got in your Excel, right? So because it is a connection only, you have not used any pivot on that, so the file of the size still remains very less. Okay, now the next thing is that if you want to create a pivot anytime, that I can just go and say the load to, and I can create the pivot on that, right? Another thing which I want to tell you here is that you can also directly create the pivot from the insert option, as most of us are used to it. Though there is a shortcut key also, which is Alt and V, because when you press Alt, this ribbon gets highlighted, as you can see here, right? So just press N, and when you press N, you need to press V. right? So that's all up to you. You want to use the insert pivot or what? But here I'm going to tell you something very interesting. Now, where is your table? My table, obviously this option you use when you have a data in the Excel sheet. We don't have a data. So what you're going to do, obviously I'm going to use external data source, right? So when you use external data source, first of all I'm going to go in the new sheet, for example, and then choose the connection. So external data source means that this is basically the external data. So when you click on the choose connection, this query and the connection, this pane will show up here in this way. Okay, this may look little different according to your version, but more or less it is like this, same. So I go and use my query 2 because I don't want to work with the query 1. So query 2, you should remember the name of your query. This is query hyphen 2. So 2 is a name, as you can see here. So I say open. When you say open, you just need to click OK, and this will go and insert the new sheet. So now you can proceed with the pivot. As I say that you need to be a master in the pivot if you want to really go and use the Power Query, because Power Query editor, why we use it? To refine the data, to structure the data, and finally when the data is structured, what do you want to do? You want to make the reports, you want to do the analysis, and for that the pivot is a wonderful option, isn't it? Right? So now again, as you can see here, I have got the data and I can use this the way I want. So I hope I have been able to clear the thought process that how we can import the text files, and then what is a connection only, and not necessarily you have to first export the data from Power Query and delete the sheet, then it becomes the connection only. In fact, in the close and load to option also, when you say close and load to, when you see that pop-up coming with the pivot, the connection only can also be used. And at the same time, not only just right click here, if you want to create some report, you can also use this insert and say pivot table, Alt and V, and then you can use this connection also if your Power Query has the connection only option available. Okay, otherwise you can, as we can use the table range also. Okay, so this is how, guys, we go and work with the text files. Okay, now after we are done, you can pause the video and you can practice on this first of all. Okay, and should you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay, but the next thing which I want to now tell you is that how we can import the data from the folder. And in your folder, it may be Excel files, CSV files, the other formats. We can always filter the things. Okay, so to do this kind of a stuff, what we need to do is, the first thing which I do here is that I simply go in the data tab, and in this data tab I go and click on the get data from file, and this is the option. Now you need to go and pick from folder. Okay, so just find out where you have this option, Excel 2013 or Excel 2010 users. The option will be there under the Power Query. Just click on the browse, and now just go and target your that specific the folder. So I'm just going to say in my this desktop, it's a Power Query. So I go and select the Power Query, and then I go and select this folder and then this folder. So this is the folder, right? Import TXT from folder. I click OK, and I click OK here, right? If you remember that this specific folder contains this Lecture3 file also, which in fact is showing here as a read only. You can see here, right? So obviously if I have to target all these text files, I do not want this file to be included. The first option is you can keep the text files in a separate folder, but what if you can't, let's say you don't want to do it? Well, that's okay. In the Power Query, when you go and upload this, so this is all, when you upload the data from the folder, this is how the data looks like. You see that the content says binary, the name, extension, the date modified, created, date accessed, and the folder, right? So this is a pretty much good amount of information which is coming in your way, right? So now what is the next thing I want to do? I want to say that transform the data. So simple, right? So now all the data would come here in the window, and this time I will say that this is my data, which I'm just going to rename this as data from the folder. Okay, so I say that from folder. Okay, and underscore all. Click outside and there we go. So now we have this query from folder underscore all. Now in this entire stuff we don't need all this information, so you can go and delete this. Okay, now you're going to learn here how to delete the columns also. I know you would say that, oh, you told me this thing before also. Well, yes, but you know, one by one you can also go and remove it. That's pretty easy. But in order to save the time, what you can do is you can also go and select using the shift key, click here and all the folders will be selected and you can say remove columns, right? I think I have spoken about this before also. There is another option. If columns are too much, then what you can do is just keep this content over here, the content, the binary. Okay, whatever the rest options are showing here, let's say we do not need it. Maybe we need it. That this is something we'll talk in the next lecture, but right now I just want to combine the data. So to combine the data, just keep these binary files here. Okay, if I click on this binary file, you see that you find here the file name and the size. Okay, so just if you click here, you find another file. Do not click on this hyperlink, just click on this. So just don't click on this, otherwise the file will get opened. I'm going to tell you all this gradually. Okay, so right now I select this and I right click and I say remove other columns, so that all the rest of the columns are going to be deleted, right? So if you click here, you will find here all the files. You can see here I have all the files over here. When I click on this actually shows me that there is some error because it is being used by another process. Now you see that this is basically Lecture3, which is the file I'm using, which I have opened. Obviously you can't import this, right? I can't import the read-only file. The file is open. And the second thing is I never wanted to import the Excel data. So now what we are supposed to do in this case? Well guys, go in the view and you remember the query setting, right? This is the one. Now in the Power Query, the beautiful thing is that it keeps on recording the steps which you find here in the applied steps. Okay, so what you can do is, this is the last step. You can go here and you can delete this cross sign. Just go and delete this. Look at this, you are back on the main data, right? So anytime you can just go and revise the steps. You can click on the steps here. If you have 50 steps here applied, you can just jump from one step to the another, and this is a beautiful thing, right? It works like a VBA, Excel VBA, right? So here you can just go and jump to any other thing. If you find that you want to see the information, what step basically what happened on this step number 3, 4, 5, and if you want to, let's say, delete the step also. So in my case, I forgot to do one thing. I forgot to put the filter here, right? So you click on the extension and you just make it uncheck. So once you have filtered out the files, now I'm just looking for TXT files. What I can do is, now I go and select this column and I say right click, remove the other columns. Okay, so this was the important point which we missed before, and I removed the column, and as you can see, side by side the steps will be recorded. So the good thing, the beautiful thing about the Power Query is that if I just let's say for example, I forgot that what was done before this, how the data was looking like, so I can quickly go and select the source, and I can see that how the data basically started. This was the step number 1 when we actually imported the data, and after that it created another step which is filtered row, and here I can simply say that okay, so here I've got the text files, only the text files, and the filter was, you can see there's a check mark also on the filter, as this is something you find in the Excel also, spreadsheet also. Okay, the last step which we have done is the remove other columns. Now why I have done this? Because I wanted to compile only the text file data. Okay, so finally guys, now we have the file here. You can see that it shows here 1.txt. I showed you this before also, I'm again repeating. So this way you can check the data also and the size also, but make sure you don't click here, because if you click here the file will get opened. As a beginner you may do that unknowingly. For example, let me do it. Suppose I clicked here and all of a sudden the file got opened, right? Now what you need to do. Obviously this is a step which you never wanted to do, but somehow it happened. No problem. You can see here that the step is recorded. So you can just go and say I want to cross this. Click on this cross sign. Okay, so this is going to be removed. Again, promoted headers. this also needs to go. Again, imported CSV. So I think this is the step which actually imported the data. So again, I click on this, again I click on this content also. I mean, I'm trying to delete this. So keep on doing that, right? This is how it is. You're back on the original step. Now again, I want to tell you something. Let me do the same thing again. I click on the binary and you see all these 3 steps imported, in fact 4 steps, from content to imported, promoted, change type. All these steps, this is something we want to remove it. So instead of clicking E on each item and deleting this, what you can do is you just go on the content and say right click, and you can say that delete until end. This means after this and including this step, everything will be deleted. This is a very, very beautiful, cool options. Just click on the delete because I know what I'm doing, right? So once the steps are deleted, they are deleted. You got the point? Now once I know that, when I click on this, the right side, okay, I know the files are looking good. What is the next thing I want to do? The next thing is that you click on this combine files. You see these 2 arrows, right? By default they come when you import the data from the folder. So I just go and click on this, and this will take just few seconds, and it's evaluating. So all the 3 text files, or I would say that all the files from the folder, are going to be combined now. Fantastic, guys. Okay, so this is the preview looks good to me. I click on OK, and finally you will have your data here. Now the next thing which you want to do is, obviously you want to go and create a pivot on this. I don't think so that we would like to load this data because this data is huge. So your Excel, the size of the file will increase, and that it is going to create a problem the moment you type in some formulas over there. So we can keep the data over here, and we can just say that I just want to load the the pivot, because through the pivot I will do everything. Pivot table, new pivot table report, and new worksheet. Click OK. So you will have a new pivot table created, and this is as you can see, query and connection pane. This will remain there. So we need to wait for some time, and the pivot will be created. I think it is a connection only. I forgot that, so I can quickly right click here and say load to, and we can create the pivot table from here. Okay, so there we go. So once I have the pivot, you can just go and create the pivot, whatever you want to do. So we have now a big data over here, 3 text files, and I think it's almost 160 MB, the data. It's taking some time, as you can see. So finally we have the data. I'm not going to obviously do anything over here. I just keep some pivot points here. I just want to show you the size of the file, right? So I save the file, and now we're going to check the file size. Okay, now you can see that it's just 930 KB, guys. I mean 930 KB means that, so once you have the 1000 KB over here, which is almost, so we can say that it's almost like 1 MB, right? So just imagine how much data you have here, right? 47 MB, 47 MB, 47 MB. So it's almost 150 MB, and here you are managing the entire thing with just 1 MB. I think this is fantastic, right? So it's not just the compression. It is not just the data is compressed and the file size is too small, but also just imagine the power. You can play around with this data using the pivot. You can make the reports. Well, we will use the logic data, I mean, in the coming sessions, obviously, because we have to make the reports. But right now we are not talking about the data analysis. We are only talking about how to exchange the information, how to connect with the external world when it comes to the Power Query editor. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me in, and in the next session we will talk more about the importing stuff. Okay, you have a good day, guys, and please make sure you do the practice, and any questions you have, you can just email me. Okay, bye bye.